JJ, I'll start with just maybe kind of a social question. I know you're on Gail Benson's social justice committee. Just your thoughts on what the league is doing with this initiative, with slogans on the court and the ability for players to have a slogan or another name on their jersey. Will you do that, and just kind of your thoughts with what the league is doing in some of these efforts?
Sure. I think number one, I'm always very appreciative of our league, our union, our leadership amongst players, allowing us to use our platform to express ourselves, to speak out, to be active and be advocates. So I think it's great that we're going to have some stuff on the court, potentially some stuff on our jerseys. Secondly, I think more importantly, the league, the union, players, we're actively trying to create policy change and invest in black communities, real dollars. And that's going to happen over the course of any number of years. It's going to not be a quick change. It's going to be incremental. So I think that second piece is more important than us having the ability to write something on the back of our jersey. The system has to change. Obviously, we need to change some of the way that we portray, the way that we talk about, the way that we treat people. But the system itself needs to change. So I think that's the more important piece for our league, is how do we help in creating systemic change.
Hey JJ, Christian Clark with Null.com. Going to this campus will require everybody to be away from their families for 5 weeks. Not easy for anybody, particularly people with young children. Was this a difficult decision for you to make?
Not really. I feel like I have a responsibility to my team. I feel like I have a responsibility to the league. I feel like I have a responsibility to the younger guys who are trying to earn their livelihoods. So I mean, I knew that if we were going to play as a league, I was going to play. The only part that was difficult was and is navigating what we're doing in regards to Black Lives Matter, in regards to social justice movement. That's more of the thought process, is how are we doing doing things there. In regards to my family, it's more than 5 weeks. It's it's 2 weeks here in New Orleans. It's 5 weeks, 6 weeks in Orlando, potentially 8, potentially 10, potentially 12. I mean, you start adding it up, and you're looking at 2 to 3 months with no contact with your kids and your wife. So it's that's a very emotionally daunting thought, is to just be away from them for that long.
So JJ, this is Will Guillory from The Athletic, and we've heard you speak about the Black Lives Matter movement and all those different topics a lot on your podcast and social media. Why do you feel the responsibility to speak up on those topics as much as you have, and with as much passion as you have over the past few weeks?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, I don't think it's just been the last few weeks. I have felt like a lot of people more of a need and a pull to speak up since George Floyd was murdered. But this is not something that's like new for me. I don't think it's new for me. And a lot of the stuff that Chelsea and I have done in the past has not been public, and that's been intentional. So I think, in trying to listen, especially listen to black voices, you have to figure out, where you should step aside and where you should speak up and where you should act. And we're all figuring that out in real time. But just having the basic human emotion of empathy, I think it's very easy to say, all right, I need to speak up, I need to act, I need to help, I need to listen, whatever it may be. So some of it is just that, having empathy, honestly.
Amos, go ahead.
I'm just curious about the Players Coalition you guys formed with Demario and Lonzo. How did that come about? How did that discussion start? And, what are, I guess, your plans for that organization moving forward?
Yeah. So, and honestly, it all happened pretty quickly. Miss Benson and some execs from the Saints and some execs from the Pelicans sort of took the lead and sort of getting this together, and they just asked a few players if we wanted to be a part of this, and obviously it's an open invite for any player that wants to help. We've had a number of email exchanges. We just have in the last few days gotten sort of a timeline and what it looks like for the next basically 2 months, and us trying to figure out action plans. So again, we're in the initial stages of this, and we're trying to figure out what exactly we want to focus on, specifically in New Orleans and Louisiana, and how we can help change things.
Ian, go ahead.
Hey, JJ.
Hey, Dan Smith.
2 questions for you. One, how much of the mental preparation for Orlando or the bubble is figuring out what to do with the non-basketball time and filling the day, and kind of what's sort of your plan for that? And then secondly, we saw that picture of Zion yesterday. As an internet connoisseur, I'm sure you saw that photo as well. What do you expect from him in this reboot?
First question. For me personally, I think it'll be a lot of pool time. I'm hoping on non-game days that we don't have that typical 2 to 3 o'clock 30-minute thunderstorm that we always get in Central Florida. I'm hoping for clear skies. In the last few summers, July and August have always been about getting a great tan in the Hamptons. So this year now it's going to be trying to get a great tan in Orlando. No, in all seriousness, I plan on bringing a ton of books down there. I'll be doing my podcast down there. I might play a little golf. Definitely going to try to catch up with some of the guys around the league that I don't get to see as much as I'd like. In regards to Zion, the expectation is that he's going to sort of pick up where he left off. The key for him is his body and just being in shape. And as you saw yesterday, it was all over my timeline. He looks fantastic.
Good luck with the tan.
Thanks, man. I've actually been rooming with Drew since I've been back, because our lease only ran through the school year, so I don't have a place to stay. So I've been living with Drew, and so I've gotten like 2 days so far out at his pool. So we're getting the base tan down before Orlando.
Fletch, go ahead.
JJ, it seems like a world ago when it was media day, and I'll paraphrase here, when you said you told Zion, don't F it up for me regarding the playoffs. So much has changed, and obviously that was a moment of levity, but how important is that for you to continue that streak, even in a situation like this resuming the season, and knowing there are other bigger factors at play?
Yeah. Well, when we discussed this as a team about what we wanted to do, whether we wanted to play, what that would look like, I made it very clear that my playoff streak was insignificant in the grand scheme of things, and I truly mean that. I feel like this entire season, this entire year has an asterisk next to it, and if we make the playoffs or we don't make the playoffs, like I will be at peace either way. But having said that, we're obviously going down with the intention of making the playoffs and hopefully making a run. I think so much of Orlando and the results in Orlando will be about who wants to actually be there. And I feel really good about the mental makeup of our group right now.
JJ, we haven't heard anything from the league about whether Alvin will be allowed to coach or not. He said the other day he wants to coach and he's planning on coaching. Do you have an opinion about whether the league should allow him to be inside the bubble?
That is way above my pay grade. I have no opinion. I would just say that health matters most, and any decision should be based on that.
Well, if I could ask you a follow, could you talk about how Alvin and his personality has sort of worked for this young team? What is special about Alvin in connection to a team this young?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of it is just his personality. He's fairly even keeled, and doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. I think he's been around the NBA long enough to understand, you're going to hit some rough patches. One of the most remarkable things about our season was that we had this 13-game losing streak. And in the middle of that losing streak, when typically guys would be pointing fingers, coaches would be pointing fingers, it seemed to me like it was more about let's all put our heads together and problem solve. And Alvin was obviously a big part of that. The leaders amongst the players was a big part of that. Our coaching staff was a part of that. Griff and Trajan were a part of that. Like everybody wanted to solve the problem together, as opposed to let's blame this guy or let's blame this guy. It's one of the reasons that after that losing streak we had a really good run and some big wins.
Mark, go ahead.
JJ, what have you seen from this team in terms of the growth and chemistry as the season has continued, and how quickly do you think you guys can get back to the groove you were in when the season was halted?
I can't answer that question. I have no one really knows what any team is going to look like. The layoff or the break or whatever you want to call it from mid-March up until basically July 10th of not playing basketball, real basketball, is significant. Not having proper training, not really being able to access great food all the time, like all these things that we've become so accustomed to, and we're blessed to have these resources. They just haven't been there. So for our team, I have no idea. We can't even, we're here at the practice facility. I don't see half my team when I come in. I don't know if you guys understand that. I come in the morning with the morning group and I see half my team. I don't see Brandon or Lonzo. So I July 10th we'll start practicing. You probably ask me then. I have no idea. Yeah.
What about where you guys were though when it stopped? How did you feel about where you had gotten to that?
Well, we were within striking distance, of the 8th seed. I felt like we definitely had some momentum there, but again, it seemed like every time people would sort of count Memphis out or count Portland out or Sacramento, these teams would make a run. So we're one of a handful of teams there that have a chance at that 8th seed. Hey Sam, thanks for joining us, man.
Of course, thanks for having me, guys.
Hey JJ, this is Will from the Athletic again. I know you said on your podcast that you were able to lose some weight during the shutdown. Just how are you feeling now compared to before the shutdown? And I know you were dealing with a hamstring.
Yeah.
Before the shutdown. How was that feeling?
Yeah, no, the hamstring, I was basically cleared to start moving and shooting the day I left New Orleans. So that was exactly 3 weeks. So I was able to train. I had access to a gym. Yeah, I weighed in yesterday. I think or 2 days ago when they weighed us in at 193. So I was usually around 204, 205 this season. So I lost over 10 pounds. That was intentional, by the way. I wanted to get back to my Duke playing weight. But yeah, no, I feel healthy. I feel good. I don't know if you guys know, but I just turned 36. So, that it starts to hit a little different as you get older. But I feel good.
Happy belated, by the way.
Thank you.
JJ, it's Andrew from ESPN. You talked about not having all of those things you're accustomed to as an NBA player. How important was it for you and for other players to get your own work in at separate gyms and things like that as you were starting to ramp this process back up?
Yeah, no, I think it was really important. There was I've talked to a bunch of different guys on my team. I've talked to guys around the league. I think everybody sort of went through those 3 months a little bit differently. I feel like for me, I never really shut off. And some of that was because I was coming off an injury. So I went up to New York and I quarantined for, that 10 to 14 day period. And then I got back in the gym and pretty much was just on the court 6 days a week for 3 months. And, I talked about resources, I couldn't, it's not like I could train with my trainer, so he was sending me workouts. I was trying to fit it in where I could. I got really adept using a slow cooker, so that I had sort of, meal prep done at the beginning of every week so that I could get my normal sort of, nutrients in. But every guy sort of is different. And I know some guys actually, took time off and sort of used this as a vacation. I feel like for me, I never really mentally checked out. It's just been one long all-star break, I guess. I don't know. Actually, that's a terrible analogy because normally during an all-star break, 130,000 people don't die. So scrap that one. But it just, for me mentally, is, in regards to the season, I just never really shut off.
That would be a really horrible all-star break if that was going to be the case.
Yes.
Malika Andrews of
Yes.
ESPN. JJ, in talking to Avery Bradley and some other folks, players have said that it took a little while to figure out not just we want support from the league, but what are the actual tangible, real measures that we want teams and the league to take in order to continue to support social justice causes and Black Lives Matter. So I'm curious for you, what was the process of figuring out not just say you care, but this is the things that we actually want and need to see and presenting that to them?
Yeah. So I assume you're talking about sort of that group of players that was on those 2 phone calls. Is that sort of?
Yes, and it also does seem like, generally speaking, there's a collective sentiment that people want Black Lives
Sure.
Matter, but there is a disconnect when it comes to what that means and what those tangible actions are.
Sure. So I was not on the first call. I was on the second call, which I know maybe some of you in the media were on that call as well. It seemed like some guys were being quoted verbatim. So I was on the second call. In between those 2 calls, I actually got notes from the first call. I reached out to some guys and got some notes from the first call. And it was apparent right away that these tangible things that you were talking about were not only important, but more than reasonable. I think that it was really key for, I would say, every player, that the league and the players union, that we sort of joined together and figured out a way to take action. In regards to specifics and what is being presented to the league and what the league is coming back with, again, I'm not in those discussions. I do know for a fact they're happening, and there are things in motion. Again, this is not something that's going to just happen overnight, and the money has to be there, and that's a whole process. Once the money is there, the board, whoever is on the board, and my understanding is there'll be a mix of players on the board as well as executives and owners. We'll figure out, where that money gets allocated. amongst grassroots organizations and in certain black communities. But I know the league is actively taking those steps that a lot of players wanted. And, I number one, I commend that group of guys for taking leadership on that. I think it was phenomenal, and I commend the league for listening and moving in that direction. Did that answer your question, Malika?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I
I can't really give the specifics. You know what I mean? Because
I guess
yeah.
my more specific question though is, for a while it seemed like there was this sentiment of we want something to happen, but we don't know what we want to happen. So how did you go from wanting something, this very vague something, to
Yes.
well, we need something, that this is what the something is?
Yes, that's I get what you're saying. That's probably a question that I can't answer. I think I know because I've talked to all of them, but our leadership at the union is on this, and they have been much more specific in terms of what it is we want. And I know Kyrie has been a part of that too, not just on the executive committee, but also in separate conversations that he's had with people around the league. So I know he's taken some action on that as well. But there have been specifics where I think enough guys have felt like we can move forward with this.
Thank you.
Hey, JJ, Rod Walker with the Advocate. Just as a shooter, how different would you think it would be just playing in the gym without fans, and just where do you find the energy as a team without fans there?
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a lot of interesting subplots to this experience in Orlando. For me, I think the most interesting will be playing an NBA game with no fans. I think it's going to be very surreal, almost eerie. It could provide a very unique viewing experience on television. I'm not sure, but I will say that I've played in those arenas, on those courts before, in AAU in high school, and won a couple national championships down there in Orlando. So I feel like comfortable playing there, but it will be surreal.
All right, Sam, go ahead. This is going to be the last question, guys.
JJ, great to see you. The last time I saw you, we were in that hallway at the Golden One Center, and we said briefly that, I remember asking you if this was going to be a wrap on the season, and like a lot of people, you thought it probably was going to be. I wonder now, how surprised are you, not only that we're restarting, but what has transpired, what the league is trying to build, and within that, where is your comfort level and the functionality of all of this as you head into this kind of strange new world?
Yeah. So, like a lot of people, that it seemed like, especially those first couple months, there were really good days of hope and optimism, not just in regards to having a season, but in regards to COVID. Then there were days where you just felt, down, and you felt that sort of feeling of despair. We started seeing that momentum that we were going to maybe play. It seemed like we had bent the curve a little bit, and then all of a sudden, George Floyd gets murdered, Breonna Taylor's murdered, the tape of Ahmaud Arbery comes out. So now we're dealing with this, and we're still trying to figure out the logistics of playing. And then this second wave has hit for COVID. So to say that we have like any sort of comfort level would be a lie. There is no comfort level. We're not with our families. We're not at our homes. We're isolated in a bubble in the middle of a hot spot in the middle of Florida, while there's social unrest going on in the country, and we're 3 months away from potentially the most important election in our lifetimes. So there's all that going on. Now we have to figure out a way to perform and play basketball and all that, because I do believe it is the right thing to go and play, but there is absolutely no comfort level, none. And I know the league and I know the union has tried to create this environment, and I get it, but there's so much else going on right now. We're going to go play and we're going to do our best, but we realize there's so many more important things